Put your hands together for Ski! So to say,
you do that. I've never seen you.
I know.
I didn't realize I was next, and I'm like,
I should probably consider what thing I'm going to do next. And then I'm like, oh shit, that's now. Damn. Darn it. So, what I would like to do is I would like to read to you from the book of Jesus. Which I'd like to point out doesn't actually exist. There's Matthew, there's John, lots and lots and lots of Paul. There's no book of Jesus. And this is one of the things I'd like to remind you of. The first Christianity, the truest Christianity, had no Bible. You cannot point to the Bible and say, this is Christianity. Because Christianity existed before this did. And not simply in those places where Jesus was and was preaching, but in those places he had been. They were still truer to the faith than what you get now. So let's read from the book of Jesus. Jesus said nothing in written form. Now, the disingenuous will say, well, it was, 20-something, it was like, 2, 3, 5 BC. Of course he didn't write. Not many people could write. No. Jesus is recorded within the Bible that you like so much as a rabbi. There is no such thing as a rabbi who cannot read and cannot write. They come from a long scholarly tradition. Even back then, they had access to the Torah and the beginnings of the Talmud. So he could have written his own words down, and he chose not to. Maybe we should read a little less from Paul and Peter and Mark and fucking John, and read a little more from the book of Jesus, who spoke very intentionally not in plain language. He spoke in parables. And when his disciples asked him, why do you speak in parables? He said, I don't want everyone to understand. Now that's how they kind of have chosen to interpret it in the Bible. But I think maybe, and I'm taking some liberties here, I think maybe what he wanted to say was, I come from a religion that really looks to the Torah as a literal truth, a 100% incontestable, inflexible truth. And I don't want that again. We need something that moves beyond the written word. And if I tell you what I think, or if I write it down myself, I've lost. I've defeated myself. The whole purpose of my being here has been thrown out the window because you're not going to pay attention to it. What you're going to do is you're going to pay attention to the words on the paper. You're going to legal them. You're going to try to find loopholes. You're going to try to find maybe there's some exceptions. And I don't care about the legal loopholes or the exceptions. That's not what I'm here to preach. So, I'm not writing this down. And instead, we turn to those people who did write things down. And for those of you who aren't into biblical scholarship, and I'm only a little bit, the first books of the Bible weren't generally written until anywhere from 40 to 150 years after Jesus had died. Now, most of you aren't in your 40s, but if you're getting there, how well do you remember something that happened 40 years ago? So here's these old guys, the disciples, who once wandered around with Jesus, trying to write down memories of what it was like being with him. 40 years later. And then you get Paul, who was not written once in the Bible, not written twice in the Bible, but had at least 3 different authors write his stuff. Because that was okay back then. That's one of the things you did. It was just cool to do. And you see that maybe this cannot be literal simply because it doesn't contain the most important book of all. The book of Jesus, which is silence. Thank you.